The national intellect. Now, I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what we learn, how we learn, what we know. What about our history? What about the understandings of government? What about the understandings of how government works? It is a little frightening to me as I look at the world, and I look at the United States, for instance, and I see a vast array of ignorance. Now, there are several factors for this. First off, there seems to have been a drop-off over the years in schools, our education process. We keep talking and touting over the fact of how advanced we are. Yet, if I gave an examination to students today that was given in the 1890s, they would flunk miserably because the kids in the 1890s had to learn so much more. Now, I know we have lots of universities, lots of schools, and people are very well educated in their field. But I often say, are they? A lot of people don't understand the government. Some people just think this is a democracy. Now, of course, it was founded as a republic. When they initially wrote the Declaration of Independence, when the Constitution was written, the Bill of Rights, there was a very strong feeling, of course, to make this country a republic, which is a limited form of democracy. Basically, the people you elect speak for you. You do not have a voice per se. You affect the people that represent you with your voice. And if we can translate the word voice, we can say the word vote. That is the way this country was founded. It was also founded with some very, very racist ideas. Only rich, white men could vote. Women didn't amount to anything. And the other thing is this: if you were black, Asian, or anything else, Spanish most probably, good chance you wouldn't get a vote. Unless you had lots of money. And the odds of that weren't too great. So it was a very limited voting bloc. Things would change over the years. And nothing is perfect. Nothing is set up well. That's what happens with time. And initially, when this government was founded, no one even thought of political parties. It wasn't until you had the jump between Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr, all fighting it out, that political parties really got their starts. And today, we have a political system that is very much unlike what existed in the past, I should say. Now, let's just look at a couple of things that I think are kind of interesting. The government that exists today, as I said, is very different than what was there before, for several reasons. First off, a lot of people think that the Declaration of Independence is the foundation of our government, or the founding of it. It's been used in many respects. Abraham Lincoln used the Declaration of Independence as a political tool, and very successfully at that. So did John Quincy Adams, who in many respects is the pathfinder for Lincoln. He's the one that cleared the roadway so Lincoln could do what he did. I'll get into that another day. But nonetheless, government was extremely limited. The powers of government started to change for a vast regard during the American Civil War. The country changed remarkably. In many respects, the country that was founded with the ideals of the Declaration of Independence died during the Civil War, and a new government was founded. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are in many respects the documents for the new government. So much changed. This was a loose connection of states together to form a federal union. That's the way it was thought of before the American Civil War. After the Civil War, it was a union that was basically unassailable in the sense of breaking it apart. Also, I will tell you this, certain things happened that changed this government. The office of president changed. Changed a lot with Lincoln. Lincoln was the first to really throw a lot of changes in there. He stretched the Constitution, well, basically it kind of snapped. Also, he suspended the writ of habeas corpus. Also, Congress changed. Go past Lincoln, go to the various presidents afterwards. And then we have a bunch of really quiet, demurring individuals who didn't do much. And then you come up to William McKinley. And William McKinley is one that changes things a lot. We become an imperial power under William McKinley. We become an empire. We change. The Spanish-American War. That splendid little war, as John Hay called it, changed everything. And so the country that was developed after the Civil War took on a whole new significance, a whole new look under the McKinley administration. McKinley is followed by his vice president after his assassination, who was Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt changed things a lot as well. He called himself the trust buster, but he wasn't much of a trust buster, to be honest. The real trust buster was William Howard Taft after him, who busted twice as many trusts as Roosevelt in half the time. But he doesn't get much credit because he wasn't too much of a showman. Theodore Roosevelt, as his daughter said, wanted to be the bride at every wedding, the corpse at every funeral, and the baby in every bassinet. It's kind of fun. Also, another thing interesting, in 1912 they changed how senators were elected. States used to be involved in the placing of senators in the Senate, because then that senator would have the state's interests in mind. Once it went to popular vote within the state, it changed. No longer were they supporting a certain faction. They were out there for themselves. Not to say that they weren't before, but it changed a lot. Several other things happened. Under the administration of Franklin Roosevelt, the government changed vastly. And we started a lot of programs which many people called socialist. And to a degree they are. And I always get a kick, Social Security, which was started not at the behest of Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was basically something that was forced upon him during the Depression. But he created a lot of programs. I think the WPA, even though it didn't do as much as they said it did a lot. And WPA projects were all over the country. I don't know why we don't have them today. Considering the unemployment, why doesn't the government hire people and they can fix bridges and roads and this and that? Wouldn't that be great? Just don't do that, I guess. The government changed more and more, and then we got into the administrations of Eisenhower, created the highways, and JFK. Well, JFK didn't get a chance to do too much, but he did change some things in the sense of the balance of power with Russia. Actually, Russia kind of pushed him out of the way in many respects. Khrushchev basically held power in that whole thing. There's a lot that went on in the Cuban Missile Crisis which we don't talk about. We'll talk about that too someday. And then, of course, we have our modern era from Kennedy onward, you might say, 1960s. You know, the New Society. And then, of course, Richard Nixon, who was far more liberal than we give him credit. And we had Reagan, and of course we work our way right up through the Bushes, the Clintons. We've got too many Bushes. I don't want to have two Clintons either, because that's ridiculous. I didn't want to have two Bushes, but, you know. Nonetheless, in these last years, especially when we came to 9/11, we disposed of the writ of habeas corpus again. We killed it. We killed Magna Carta. The government's changed a lot. So, what do people know about our government? What do they understand about it? Very little. In fact, if you stop somebody on the street, say, what do you know about the government? They'll say, well, I think Obama's president. They'll probably have a hard time figuring out who the vice president is. Joe Biden. Forget the Supreme Court. They won't have the faintest idea. And they won't have any idea who their senator is, or congressman, nor probably have they voted. So, in starting this, it's an interesting thing I find for myself when I start talking, and I enjoy conversing on these subjects. I plan on going from here to go here, but I seem to get here and then I go there. So I didn't quite follow the tenets of what I planned on talking about. But what I want to say is we need better education. We need a better understanding. We need an educated electorate. I was very fortunate to interview a lot of politicians, talk to a lot of them. I talked to members of Congress, Senate, one of the members of the Warren Commission. I've talked to justices, and I've talked to various other lawmakers. And all of them pretty much understand the fact that the public has no idea what the hell's going on, nor do they seem to care. So I would love to push for education for kids. May I make a suggestion? I did something 25 years ago that I've never regretted. I took my television and threw it out. I've never had one since. And I will never have one. Although I must say that the computer has taken the place of the television in many respects. But I do not want to watch reality television. I find that demeaning. And I have another thing that I think is our media, our culture, has a tendency to kind of dumb us down a little bit. Might I encourage all of you read